today's topic is respectful conversations, what my grandparents told me. And this topic is something that really is going to have us gain deep insights into a number of things from what our grandparents have actually told us that we can apply to the current landscape. And this topic doesn't just take us back to the past, but we're looking at current relevant ideas and insights that contribute to and that can be applied to the future of social and behavioral change in our continent. If you cast your mind back to your interactions with your grandparents, you would agree with me that our grandparents influenced and impacted us positively, and we can actually learn from the nature and the way these conversations happened or occurred in the past. And that's why we are going to delve right into the discussions for this afternoon. So to take us forward in this discussion, I would now want to invite Venancio for him to start, and would like Venancio Ahabwe to actually share his perspectives and his insights on today's topic. So Venancio, you have quite a lot of time. You can actually go straight on for 15 minutes and we'll take questions and also get feedback from our participants and the audience. So over to you now, Venancio. You can please give us some perspectives and insights that you have on today's topic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Precious. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this opportunity for me to share my perspective about the past, about what I learned from the grandparents and indeed from my parents, and how actually relevant it is to the work that we do today. So as introduced already, my name is Venancio Ahabwe. And that name Ahabwe is my local name. Venancio is my Christian name. But when I look at the two names, I should actually have been baptized Ahabwe, because Ahabwe means we survive by God's will. That's what it means in my mother tongue. Venancio, when I checked, it means a hunter, which actually seems to be a little distant even from God. But because of the interruption of different things, what should be a Christian name is what is my my second name, my family name. So actually, as a person, I had no interaction with my grandparents except through my parents.
This meeting is being recorded.
So I had no direct interaction with my grandparents except through my parents, because by the time I was born, all the four grandparents, two parents of my father and two parents of my mother, were already dead. So I didn't see them. Yet I know so much about them, because everything I know about them is through my parents, because they tended to boast of the values and virtues and the heroic actions that they inherited from them, to the extent that whenever they talk to us as their children, they would want us to be like them, because they would say, we are like our parents. So their parents, therefore, were inspiring them to do certain things which they wanted to pass on to their own children, and on and on and on. And I want to give an example. My father was called Petero Kavunakuchi, but it is the local name that certainly makes sense, Kavunakuchi. It is a question. That name is a statement, it's a question. It asks what kind of child is this born at this time? It's like a whole sentence. Because he was born in a season when they were expecting a girl to be born. So a boy was born, and it was a surprise to the family, because they knew how to tell that this is a season for girls, this is a season for boys. And now a boy is born. So they were very surprised, and my grandfather therefore decided to use that as the name, so that it should always be remembered that it was almost an irregular occurrence. It was something not normal, and he had a question that he wanted to keep asking. So Kavunakuchi is, what kind of child is this? What kind of boy is this born in a girl's season? But when you look at the thinking behind that name, and there it helps us to look at the naming. It portrays a sense of innovation by tending to apply local knowledge to seek answers to unique questions, because they had their preconceived answers about how and when a certain sex could be born. But now a boy comes up instead of a girl, and therefore it challenged the status quo and generated the questions. And it seems, therefore, even our grandparents, my grandparents, were interested in finding answers to different questions. So it's this name of my father, given to him by my grandfather, is a tale of local knowledge about seasons and cycles of life. And you know, the life is not just human, plant life, human life, animal life. So they would be able to observe the surroundings, to observe the weather, and know what is likely to follow. That would help them, therefore, to tell when they plant, when they can plant. They didn't have a fixed calendar that we actually we got later from the people that came to maybe colonize and teach religion and and do business. They didn't have that fixed calendar, but it was introduced later. So for them, they would observe, and therefore it was rare for them to plant out of season, unlike today. So they were friendly, they understood the environment, and therefore they could harness it. And that name of my father is also an expression of the uncertainty of life. They were aware that in life, some things can be uncertain. You cannot really know everything. That a man's wishes and dreams cannot dictate the divine outcomes. So while sometimes when we look at our grandparents, and for important to note here is that my grandparents were not Christian. In fact, my mother was baptized as an adult because the parents were not Christians. They were not anything. They were not Muslims. They were traditional people. So my father also was baptized as an adult. Actually, the two got married soon after they had been baptized. So for them, they were, whereas they could be referred to as pagans by those that could say so, they had knowledge of God, understanding of God, and therefore they could be able to attribute certain things to the divine nature of God, and that some things can happen because of God's will. Now, that is a story about how my father came into existence and was named, and he lived. He was a venturous man trying to live according to the life that I think he remembered how. So he was a man who was always looking for answers until he died at the age of 86. But I have another story that I heard from my mother, because part of the teaching, part of the training of our grandparents was through storytelling, and would have folk tales, so many things, but also actual stories of realities, because folk tales sometimes touch imaginary situations, but here was not an imaginary situation. So my mother told us about her father. And you know that in our culture, we cannot mention the name of our grandfather because I may lose my teeth. So my mother told us a story of when her father returned home from a drinking expedition, because for a man, we are an African man, drinking is very important. So he returned home late in the evening. It was already in the dark, but as he was trying to enter a house, a lion roared in the neighborhood because the population was still low, and therefore wild animals were roaming. So a lion roared, but it was not near the home. It was on another hill. But because of the nature of the roaring, you could feel that it's nearby. For him, he understood that it was a distance away, but everyone in the house, and remember he had girls, only, and a very, very young boy who was still a baby. So as he was entering the house, a lion roared from the neighborhood. But he was a resilient character. So instead of diving into the house to close the door and be safe, he went back outside shouting back at the lion and challenging it to dare and attack him, because he had drunk. You know, sometimes when people drink, they get a lot of courage. So he walked back and shouted back and said, there is nothing you can do to me. If you know you are anything, you come and I will show you. So the family was terrified. His wife, his daughters, they were terrified. They knew he was going to be consumed by a lion. And he went out and tried to take, and they tried to grab him and take him into the house to save his life. But the man resisted, and he was being held by a woman and her daughters. So he resisted and struggled with them until they got concerned that actually the lion might eat one of them instead of the man they were trying to save. So scared, they ran back and fled into the house, fearing that it might eat one of them instead. When that was done, the man followed them, walking majestically, and asked them to close the door. He was teaching them the value of courage and resilience, never to run away from challenging situations. Now, why does that story make sense to me? My mother always remembered this story and told us this story again and again, because for her, it inspired her to weather the storms of her marriage. Because as you know, a marriage at that time and a woman at that time, they were facing a number of issues, which I cannot bring here. But he would say, when there was a lion, my father never ran away. Now that I am in my family, there is nothing that can actually push me out of it. And until she died in old age, at the age of about 80, in her marriage, she had never. So those are some of the models. The grandparents were models. I think today we talk about influencers, people who do things that we admire and we copy and we emulate. So they were some sort of influencers. So that is quite a story about my own grandparents. Now, when I reflect about those stories and the other more that I cannot say now, I see that learning was an integral part of life from childhood. It did not wait until a certain age. Current school systems indicate that a child must attain a certain age to go into preschool, then to go into primary and different levels. For them, learning started at birth, and they knew that every event in the life of the family was a learning experience. Elders were respected. Everyone that is of age, of a certain age, even everyone that was senior to the other was respected. And those who were old were considered as reservoirs of knowledge. And they also used that to impart values, norms, standards of behavior, conduct, to know what is right and what is wrong. And you could see that in their system, they could disagree on anything else, but not on their culture. When it comes to culture, they would all, be at par. So you can see that the naming, sometimes they would use different approaches, different methodologies to communicate certain things. And one of the prominent in my culture, in the Ugandan culture, one of the prominent teaching methods is use of proverbs. Proverbs, they make a proverb, and you know that a proverb is a reflective statement. It helps you to reflect about something. You can interpret it in different ways. I know a story, a proverb from northern Uganda in the Acholi community, which was written by, it was written in one of the books by Okot Pibitek in the Song of Lawino and Song of Ochor. So he actually said, a pumpkin in the old homestead must not be uprooted. That is culture. He was talking about culture and spicing those of us who have gone to school and we think therefore culture is nothing and we should abandon it. And for him is that must not be uprooted. But the current programming, when you look at it, they struggle. Sometimes we talk about results, we want to deliver certain things, and we complain and sometimes blame people for not changing. But we are dealing with a culture which is like a pumpkin in the old homestead. That one, it is not uprooted because it is going to generate food. It is a source of life for the family, for the community. When you look at the people who are doing iron smelting, and there are so many in Africa, there is this equivalent of in my language, they talk of akatkin kwa kachirikabisi, but the equivalent of that is that you heat the iron when it is still hot. So if someone is a child and you impart knowledge, you impart certain values, it means that this child is going to grow and keep them permanently. So there are a number of proverbs which are entertaining, but also educative, and therefore very helpful in imparting knowledge, in imparting values, imparting culture. The other things were riddles, stories, songs, dances. In fact, about dances, when you look at dances, you see that every community has a certain dancing style. I don't know what happens in Nigeria, Precious, but I know that the different communities I have been to, when they start to dance, they don't dance like the other communities. Some jumps and they do different things. And those, you'll find that there is no school that is training. People just grow up and start dancing in a certain fashion. And you can see that this is something that we should learn from. It is something that we should be able to see and learn from. How can people learn? There is no curriculum that is in traditional dances. But if you visit any community and there is an opportunity to dance, the dancing style will be unique. It will be uniform. Some people may make mistakes, especially those who have grown up in other countries and in towns. But dances were also another way of teaching people. And we use it to dance. We used to dance, not the current dance, but sometimes after a meal, then we would pick any instruments around, sometimes a pot, and we sing and dance together as a family. But also when there was a visitor that came to a house and there was a need to express joy, then we would dance, and that dance would be uniform. They would be laughing at someone who cannot dance like others in a traditional dance. So, and the dances will happen at different times at home, at school, you know, when we are grazing animals, you know, at different times. Now, I would like to conclude by talking about what are the implications of these things to our current programming. Because more culture, norms, values, traditions, all of the things that we actually call backward, and we are
The recording has stopped.
and we are always struggling to change them, and we want them to change.
This meeting is
We are
being
the
recorded.
African Society for Social and Behavior Change, and so the change, sometimes we need to look at what we are trying to change and how we want to do it. If people are learning from childhood, when they are born, they are learning certain things, and they reach they attain the age of 20. And when they are at the age of 20, we come in with a program. We can win with the program. In the Karamoja community of Uganda, young people are taught warfare. They know how to use a gun. They can fight at any cost, and they learn from childhood. Currently, when we look at what is happening, even the National Army goes into a local village to intervene in and try to disarm civilians, local people. But it's a big struggle, it's a big fight, and lives get lost on both sides. Why? Because these children are trained from the beginning. While a soldier is recruited when he has completed senior 6 or university or whatever, and then he begins to train. And later he goes to battle with a person who was trained from the age of 3. When they stopped breastfeeding, they started learning a certain skill. So even if they are poorly armed, the skill is far, far better. So there are other traditions like which teach young people, like Imbaru, the circumcision, which is a rite of passage from childhood to, you know, you find the entire community is waiting for that event more anxiously than they wait for a program that is funded, that is promoted in the mass media, that is promoted by different powerful stakeholders. So we talk of female genital mutilation, which is female circumcision in different communities. I think there is perhaps no community in Africa that has eliminated female circumcision yet, because it has the cultural touch. It is taught, the value of it is taught from childhood, but it goes on, it is sustained. So, but our programs, usually they are short term, they have a short span, 5 years, 3 years, and in 3 years, you are expected to change the character of a person who has gone through a long life. Someone is already 35, and we are trying to change the character of that person. We also target people who have already adopted the near permanent or even permanent traits. Such a person is already at permanent level, and you can only slightly change. So that possibly can show us that maybe even the level of change that we try to achieve with the people who have lived a certain life, we need to measure. I mean, sometimes we should not expect an about turn in the character, in the behavior, in the practices of a certain individual or community. Then I think our title today is Respectful Conversations. Sometimes what happens is that we despise and brand traditional elements negatively. And we begin sometimes to call them myths. These are beliefs. These are ideas that are held and respected by the people that hold them. But when we come in, sometimes we refer to them derogatively, hoping that these people actually are going to also abandon them. But it's not the case. I think we should start from respectful perspective. So we tend to assume supremacy when dealing with communities. Then we theorize so many things. We have a lot of procedures. If we look at the training that came from our grandparents that I've been talking about, it was organic. There was no written curriculum. But everyone would know exactly what to do. I have been I've been coordinating a marriage, but surprisingly, someone is a professor whose son is going to marry another lecturer, and they are talking about the clans. I remember there was an incident here in Uganda where a girl was going to marry a man of the same clan, and the case went to court. And this is a Western kind of style court, but it ruled in favor of culture, meaning the person who was sitting in court also had appreciated the value of culture from childhood. I don't think they just relied on the law books; they also relied on their own feelings. So sometimes those procedures that we follow that are not organic do not augur well for the change that we would like to promote. And then we are split. We implementers, you and I, are split between the interests of foreign donors, their interests, and the local priorities. Because we come from these communities, we hold some values. Indeed, maybe there is none of us who is now participating in this conversation who can marry a person from their clan. Maybe. Yet we want to cause behavior change. So we have those local influences that guide the way we do. Yet we have to implement some perspectives from the donors, and therefore sometimes it affects how much we can achieve. In a nutshell, our grandparents or our ancestors still have greater influence on our lives than perhaps the influence that we have from our employers, from our peers even, and from our donors. So that's how I'd like to wind up my presentation during this afternoon. So thank you so much for listening to me. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Venancio. And I must say, you have given quite a lot of insights, and the stories that you actually told also drive one's mind to, really think about how much influence grandparents actually have had in the lives of individuals, in the lives of children, and in the lives of grandchildren. And the stories just highlight quite a number of things. And you rightly also gave us insights into how much of storytelling also came out of the grandparents that were really very impactful in molding and actually changing the lives of individuals that were under these grandparents. And what we're looking at today is respectful conversations, what my grandparents told me. We're actually looking at it from the perspectives of implementers. And Venancio, you have really given us quite a lot of things to chew and a lot of things to think about. The place where you spoke about dancing, you really were very correct about how powerful dancing and music could actually be. Even for us here in Nigeria, in West Africa, dance is one of the most powerful forms of human expression. And, it's also another powerful means of communicating. Through dance, you can actually communicate and tell stories. Through dance, you can actually have it send a message, to the individual that you are talking to. And from all you have elaborated and highlighted this afternoon, clearly the stories and the things that grandparents have also put forward are things that even as implementers in the social and behavior change space, we can actually look closely at those virtues and see how we can apply it even in the social and behavior change communication landscape currently in our different spheres and the different thematic areas that we find ourselves as implementers. Looking and thinking about the story you gave of your grandfather, incidentally, who you didn't meet, but you heard it from storytelling. That was really a very interesting one, because from that we could see courage and resilience. And that is something that we can also, apply and put into what we do as implementers. And you said so many things. I think I would want to check with our participants if they have questions, and if they have questions, we can actually entertain those questions and have you respond to them. But thank you very much. Thank you for giving us these insights on how much we can learn from the perspectives and the things that our grandparents have given us. And incidentally, I also grew up very closely with my grandparents, my mom's parents, and they were a very key part of my life. And I must tell you that the values that I picked from, being under their influence are values that I have, embraced in my work and in my journey in life. The value of dignity of labor, the value of love. So there's so many things we can actually, learn from them and use it even as we look at it from the social and behavior change communication landscape and perspective, which is a dynamic and a changing landscape. So we have Emmanuel Kayonga saying here to you, Venancio. He says, I feel we have lost certain aspects, especially around respectful and honest conversations where everyone's voice has a chance to speak at the fireplace. So he's asking, is there any take on this? Do you have anything to add based on these things that he has actually highlighted? Venancio, over to you. So we're taking responses now from our participants.
Okay. Yes, I think, Emma, you cannot be more right. Our culture, traditions really taught respect. Respect for elders, respect for each other. I think at the fireplace, it was the highest level of democracy. Everyone had an opportunity to make a contribution, to tell a story. It's not a debate, the debates that we know, but someone would narrate how they feel, what they know, and everyone would listen. Everyone would be given an opportunity at the fireplace. And that element that was part of our culture, I mean, we have left it, we have lost it in some way. Other approaches, the opportunity to sit as a family, but also sit as a community, and even later, as you grew up to understand how to respect others, to listen to others, I think it has generated into some level of arrogance, whereby, we just challenge each other using, certain concepts and jargon, other than knowing that each person has a story to tell, each person has a contribution. So yes, I agree with you, Emma. We have lost that respectful and honest, because there would be no risk of anyone telling a story. But what are we getting today? Even the media where we work, there is self-censorship. Someone cannot just write the truth because someone somewhere may not like the truth. And therefore, there is that censorship that therefore causes problems for different individuals. So I agree with you, Emma, 100%. Yes, we have lost that virtue, that aspect of dignified life. And I think these conversations possibly can tell us where we need to, maybe to return. Because I think as the moderator, as Precious, as you put it, the past is the future. To talk about the future without talking about the past is actually, when there is a book that was written by Ujiwas Young, a Kenyan author. The book is called The River Between. And the girl, Musoni, who was the main character, the daughter of a reverend who condemned the culture, went and got circumcised. Yet the reverend was teaching people to stop that pagan practice of circumcision. But the daughter sneaked out of the house and went. So a commentator, later, of course, she got circumcised and died, because that's why she's called the river between. She was between the two cultures. There was a struggle between the two cultures, and she couldn't belong anywhere. It was hard for her to belong to the Western culture that was not hers, but that's where she was being pulled to, and she was. But again, she was rooted in the local culture. So she got circumcised and died. And the commentator said that, like a ruthless plant, she lost her life. So unless we have roots in the past, we are just a finished race. We cannot survive. So the past, our grandparents, our ancestors, we have roots there. When I speak like that, don't call me a traditional. I'm not, I have saying some ideas. Also, I think lost. Maybe I'm hopeless. But these are conversations, yes, that we need to have in honest and respectful manner of our past and our present, looking at our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venancio. So there are quite a number of comments in the comment section. So here, Francis is saying that was great, Venancio, thanks. And he's saying, quick one. Do you believe that if you mention your grandfather's name, you would lose your teeth? So I guess he's referring to some of the comments you made while you were actually telling the story. So I don't know, do you want to respond to that? Okay, so.
Yeah, I think I would not. Maybe I might lose my teeth, because some of these things I don't understand. They are supernatural. So, but I have no reason to mention his name.
Yeah.
Because I think I will not. I fear to lose my teeth, and whatever that teeth is, for me, it was not about the teeth in my mouth. It's about there is some teeth that a person can lose by disrespecting their background. by abandoning where they come from, by disrespecting. There is a certain type of teeth that we can lose. And you know, when we say that so and so is a toothless, we can talk of a toothless dog, a toothless character, a toothless. We don't mean that they don't have teeth in their hand, in their teeth. They can lose some teeth somewhere. So I think that when they said you do this, they were actually trying to impart the value of respecting the elders, and that if you don't respect the elders, maybe there is certain, it is going to have certain effect on your life. So I think we need to interrogate that. What was the teeth that the person can lose?
Okay, thank you very much. So in other words, it's not literal teeth we're looking at here, but looking at translating that value of respect, which, you know, when you listen to a number of implementers in the SBCC space, they definitely would agree with us that that virtue of respect is something that is key and that should also be applied even when conducting implementation of any social and behavior change communication campaign. So Venancio, this is also for you. Paul is saying thank you, and he's asking, do you think culture can evolve? He says, is there a way, is the way young people behave and relate now new culture? And he's asking that, so let me just bring up my screen so that I can read this out. So he said, thanks, Venancio. Do you think culture can evolve? Is the way young people behave and relate now new culture? Is there such a thing like new culture that we have to keep in tandem with?
I think that's a very interesting question.
Mm.
The answer is yes. Culture can evolve.
Mm.
Indeed, if you remember history, we studied about Areman and how they lived their lives. They did a number of things. They stayed in caves, the way they discovered fire, the way they hunted, the way they did things. When you keep reading how society was evolving, I'm not talking about the society that is written about in the Bible, but when you look at, when you consider the stories that we hear about our ancestors, they evolved. The way the food they ate, because seasons changed, calamities befell them, migrations happened. They ended up in areas where they could not do what they were doing in different communities. They moved to other areas. Therefore, they adopted new ways of life. They lived in different types of houses. So from time to time, yes, culture evolves. Culture evolves, but it cannot be eradicated. It keeps, it's like COVID-19. It keeps mutating. COVID can have different variants, but it remains the coronavirus with different variants. So even the culture, the food that the people ate, the dances, the way of life, the marriages, the way they conducted the marriage ceremonies, it was many things would be dictated by where the people are, the season they are in. There are certain things people cannot do in a certain season. So if the weather changed and they had no rain, for a whole year, it means what they would be doing in April during the rainy season, they would not do it. So culture evolves. But what we need to know as implementers is that while it evolves, it cannot be eliminated, because it evolves with the time, but it is taught from childhood. People learn it from home. These other things, people learn them when they are adults outside. And no wonder that you hear societies discriminating or isolating certain individuals who develop certain characters, that certain behaviors at a certain age. You bring up a child in a certain way, and when they complete university, they do something different. Usually, it is not likely that if you are an African man and you have 8 children, you have 1 or 2 that are likely to move away from what they were trained. Usually the others will keep coming back, respecting their parents, you know. So culture can evolve depending on circumstances, but it evolves slowly and gradually. As I mentioned earlier, our programs usually want dramatic and drastic changes to happen when we implement them. And for me, therefore we need to adapt to the way culture evolves. So if the culture is going to evolve in a generation, we cannot expect it to evolve in a space of 2 years when we are implementing a program. We should be aware. And therefore that will help us to answer questions from our donors sometimes when they are asking us for results. We would like so many people to have achieved this, to have done this in the next 2 years, and we promise, and we go. So we end up forging reports and writing lies just to please the donor, instead of actually making them understand that, you know, this is a traditional norm, this is a norm, it has been there for a long time. And if we want to have a dent, if we want to make any dent on this kind of practice, this kind of behavior, we may need a generation. And I think a generation, I don't know how many years it is, you know better. But you may need a generation to make a dent on a certain cultural practice. It may not change just in a space of a 5-year program that is given, of which the first 2 years are for planning and situation analysis. Then you implement for 1 year. Then you go to do an evaluation to see whether things are changing. So that's how I can respond, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, when it comes to the issue of culture, it's something that really will take time to. We can't really finish addressing issues around culture. However, following on Paul's question, Francis here is also asking, he's saying, is the diffusion of culture that we notice, that's the diffusion of culture, he says, that is noticeable nowadays, is it a case of evolution or revolution? Or should culture be a standard or static? But I think you already sort of like mentioned and talked about how culture also sort of like changes and moves with time, and the fact that we need quite some time to have a dent in culture when it comes to implementation. But Priska here says there is also an immediate assumption by us programmers that the culture is wrong and modern knowledge is right. She says sometimes we pretend that we appreciate their opinions just to maintain peace during engagements. So she's asking, how can we promote honesty about our own biases so that it is reflected even in our programming? Venancio, that's to you.
Wow. So how can we promote honesty among ourselves? To be honest, in my heart of hearts, I think that education has spoiled us. We cannot speak the truth. We cannot be honest. We want a job. We want money. We want positions. We want popularity with the people who have. When I look back at our society, when I was growing up, you know, people would tell. So for instance, I would see people coming to my home to drink the local brew. To drink, let me call it beer. It was called Tonto, made out of bananas and mixed with sorghum. and fruit. So people would come to take that free drink. But someone would stand up and say, you cannot share, you cannot partake of this because we have never come to your home to do the same. You don't deserve this. You cannot drink with us. You are not a man. It was like that story in Things Fall Apart of Chinua Achebe. The story of when they called the man a woman. They called the man a woman because he had no titles. And it caused the problems to the man actually who did that. So they would say, you are not a man like us. You cannot. And they would challenge this person to go and do the right thing and also plant a banana plantation and produce beer and invite the community and say, last time you stopped me. 5 years ago, you stopped me from drinking with you. Now here I am. I'm a man like you. You send me away again, I will send you away from my own home. So the issue of honesty, I think that education has taught us not to be honest. There is the issue of public relations, first of all. There is the issue of diplomacy. Diplomacy means that you try to massage a lie. You try to speak around to ensure that you don't annoy someone. And so what we have learned while we have gone to school is that if a donor, if a partner, if someone who has money, a job, a position, if they have to give it to you, you must show them that you agree with them, you appreciate what they do, you are part of it, and that's when. So our education cannot allow us to be true to ourselves. Some of these things that I'm saying here, I am very sure maybe someone would say, no, this man doesn't think we are important, so he shouldn't even get a promotion or a job or what. But I think we need to go back to that honesty of calling a spoon a spoon. Sometimes we know that a program is going to fail. But if the donor has expectations and has spelled out certain results, we ensure we go and look for the results. Instead of engaging the donor and say, as I mentioned earlier, let us move according to the conditions, let's move at the rate of the society. This community can only change, we can only achieve so much. We cannot say that. We say, yeah. If 70% in the next 3 years must be circumcised, we are going to circumcise them. And so you end up going into manipulation and blackmail, which is disrespectful and dishonest. So I think that we need, as programmers, as implementers, we need to sit back and know whether we want to have the dignity of an honest person or whether we want to be dishonest and not dignified, and we just get money and tell lies around. So I think we have to choose between the two, and I think the choice is clear. The choice is clear. We are choosing between. We are choosing our jobs. We are choosing the promotions. We are choosing money other than being honest to what can help the community. In fact, I should conclude on this by saying that some of the programs have not benefited communities, although they are designed to benefit communities, because we lack the courage to make it clear that they should be done in certain ways to benefit the community. So we listen to who is giving us money, and when we read their minds, we say, yes, that's what we like to do, that's what works. But you find that you have implemented the same program or similar programs for the last 50 years in the same community, but there is no visible change has taken place. Everything has remained as it is because sometimes we are not very honest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venancio. You actually are giving very deep responses and quite a lot of food for thought for everyone on the call. Rebecca has this to say. She's saying thank you. And she's also asking, she's making a comment. She says, parents are busy with work. It is the maids who now instill values in children, because please just give me a second. I'm trying to get her question. Yeah, so she says it is the maids who now instill values in children because parents are never at home. So she's asking, so how do we work this?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Yes, I can see your comment. I wrote an article about this more than 10 years ago, and I was talking about the chaos that has happened in families as people relegate, they abandon, because I was in child protection, I was doing programs on child protection, and I could see that all of us who were doing work and we are saying we are protecting the rights of children, and we are talking about sitting down with their children, teaching them, showing them what to do. You know, I was not at my own home. My children were alone. Everyone else was spending all the time in a conference talking about the rights of the children, when the rights of their own children at home are actually being violated. The children are being neglected by people who are talking about protection of the or care of children. So this is an irony. It's an irony. It's very ironical sometimes that we say we are bringing up children, but we don't give them time. And that gives a difference between us and our ancestors. Our ancestors knew, this child of mine, I want them to succeed me. I want them to emulate me. They gave them time, and they told them everything they could say about it. But I think, Rebecca, you are very right. We are too busy to look after our own children. We have now hired people to look after the children. The hiring is at home, there are maids. At schools, we have teachers. Even during holidays, we again we hire services of other people to take care of our children, because we are also committed to trying to fend for our lives. So there is a gap there, and therefore we need to go back to find out how our ancestors were doing it, because they were doing it the right way, we are doing it the wrong way. No wonder that the connection between parents and children, especially those who grew up in that kind of setting, it gets lost. So there are challenges. I think I may not answer this question, but it raises so many questions for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venancio. And I must really confess that quite a lot of insights are coming out of this discussion. And like I said a few minutes ago, it's a lot of food for thought. So this particular question you just responded to, I'm sure everyone on this call in one way or the other will definitely have something, something to say about it. And I believe it's a case of actually finding balance. And yes, like you rightly said, there is a gap and we all need to be intentional. I'm sure you agree with me. We all need to be intentional about really looking into that aspect. Thank you, Rebecca, for actually giving us. We have so many questions and so many points. So I'll just try and run through these questions for you to just give us quick insights before we try and wrap up this session. But I think we've had a fantastic session this afternoon. So Kate is asking, how can we use storytelling under the fireplace to foster SBC? He further says that he thinks the storytelling then is different from how we are telling stories today. says no school for culture, or see how strong it is rooted. There are quite a lot of things to ponder on this question. Venancio, do you want to quickly respond to this? And let's see if we can touch on the other questions that we have here before we start wrapping it up. There's so many comments and so many questions. So Venancio, over to you, please. And thank you very much, everyone, for such an engaging session. Venancio, can you respond to Kate's question? And we'll see how we can take this.
I'm trying to read it. I'm failing to see it clearly. Can you repeat?
Okay. So let me repeat Kate's question. He says, how can we use storytelling under the fireplace to foster SBC? He goes on to say, I think the storytelling then is different from how we are telling our stories today. He says, no school for culture, or see how strong culture is rooted. Do you want to say something about that?
Yes, and I think it links to the question that Paul earlier asked, whether culture evolves. We cannot go back to the fireplace, because there is no fireplace anymore. Even except in a few communities, there are a few communities that still have the fireplace, but there are a number of communities which have moved very far. The community where I come from, even getting firewood for just cook food is now a problem. So what we used to have as, you have enough firewood to keep the fire burning that you can converse, today it is not possible. So, but as I talked about the teeth, I think still the fire doesn't have to be the fire with firewood in the fireplace. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity in the family for people to sit and share ideas, for people to have a conversation, for people to engage. You'd find that around the fireplace, usually there was no quarreling, there was no fight, there was no punishment. There was always a man could have a quarrel with his wife and vice versa. They could have a fight. A parent could punish a child, but outside the fireplace. A fireplace was a place of harmony, of peace, of listening to each other. I called it the highest level of democracy, where everyone was listened to. So it was. So I think what we need to borrow from that component to today is a situation where even as a family, people have the opportunity to sit together and discuss the issues that affect them. And the issues may not be about marriage, but still, we are doing marriages. It may not be about warfare, those wars that we read in Nigeria, in Umofia. Chinwachebe talked about that village of Umofia where people are always attacking the other communities. And of course, even here in Uganda, different communities, I think there were wars in interclan, intertribal wars, that were happening. So, but those may not be happening today. But there is something that is taking place, that is happening in their place, that requires that people would sit together as a family to have a conversation about it. So the conversation today may be about business. Maybe our grandparents did not trade. They did not trade. They grew their food and ate it until they died. Maybe the conversation may be about business. It may be about their faith, about the values, the dignity that the child, issues of corruption. Can a parent, for instance, sit with their child and they talk about corruption? Issues of justice. If a child is at school, can they steal somebody's property? Can they promote justice? Can they, so there is something that can happen in the family. So we need to get the concept. For me, the fireplace is just a concept. And that concept, each family can pick it and apply it to know that this concept of a fireplace had the following values. Can we therefore achieve these values by getting something that is going to act as a fireplace for the family? So the storytelling is necessary around the fireplace, but the fireplace now may be something that is different. And the storytelling, if you have participated, I mean the small story that I told here, I've seen the comments in the chat box. People seem to remember the story that I told than these arguments that actually now I'm trying to advance, because I told about this old man and then this old woman, and people, I saw the comments, actually there was appreciation there. So even in the programming that we are doing, we may want to bring in the aspect of storytelling. So we can do it in our families, but we can also help the people that we serve to do stories around the program, but also about the things that they cherish within their community, but promote the sense of democracy to ensure that when we are doing programs, we are not imposing. We are not imposing, we are not telling, we are not dictating people what they should do. We are not prescriptive. We are listening to them, they are listening to us. There is meaningful engagement. And as our title says, there is respectful conversation. A conversation must be two-way. The two sides must listen to each other. But sometimes we descend into lecturers, into professors when we meet community members that we are meant to serve. And once we don't show that level of respect, then our programs may not achieve much. Someone was asking about technology, how we can leverage the technology. I think I saw a question.
Yes, yes, Venancio. So we have really had a great session. So that question on technology is from Bukola Toriola. She's saying, how can we leverage on new technology to apply, amplify, and preserve our culture of values? So I would allow you just quickly in a minute, just say something about that so that we can wrap up. But before you go ahead, I just want to let the participants and the audience really know that all these conversations, we will take them online. We need to continue these conversations online because there's so many questions, and this session has really generated quite a lot of insights, and we really do appreciate our panelists. Thank you very much, Venancio, for giving us so much insight into today's topic on respectful conversations, what my grandparents told me, looking at it from the implementer's point of view. So I would like you to wrap up with that question on technology, and we'll ensure that the ASSBC group takes all those questions online and we can continue the conversations over there. So over to you, Venancio, as we quickly wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone. This has really been very engaging and very enlightening.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lucius. How can we leverage technology to amplify and preserve our culture, our values? You know, what we call technology today, I think was called technology before we were born. As we said, society kept evolving over time. What was a stone was later used as a certain implement, either to slaughter an animal or to do, then iron smelting. So I think technology has not just started. So what we need, once we know who we are and what we want, my view is that even what we call technology today, in the next 20 years, some people will be laughing at it and saying, oh, you guys were on Zoom those times. You are so backward. So I think it's about looking at what do we need, what do we desire, but what do we want to preserve? You can see that currently some of the songs that were just oral, now traditional songs are audio. They are stored in audio form. They are stored in video form. They are stored in different ways. I think you see things on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook, on different platforms. So I think that what we need to know is what is that value, what is that issue in our culture that we treasure so much that we do not want to miss. And since we have a current platform, whether it is this Zoom or any other platform, then we take it there, because we know that in future, we are going to be called grandparents. Some people will call us their grandparents, and they will be looking at what we preserved for them. So if I'm able to tell this story from my grandparents, I like some generations from now, some people to say, my grandparent told me this, and this is where we are going. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much.
Thank you so much, Venancio. Thank you. What an insightful session. And we'll need to wrap up now. Thank you very much, everyone. We want to thank our panelists for giving us such great insights into today's topic, respectful conversations, what my grandparents told me. We're looking at it from the perspective of the implementer. So in a nutshell, the main key thing that we actually should go with from this session is, as implementers, we need to reignite those respectful, values and things that are meaningful that we can also apply to our social and behavior change communication campaigns, and also see how all the things that we have received and things that we have also spoken about and we have heard from our grandparents can, go a long way in also even influencing and impacting what we do as social and behavior change communicators. And on that note, I think I'll just say thank you very much, everyone, for such an engaging and interesting session. I must confess to you that I have learned so much. And Venancio, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. And I will just hand over back to the ASSBC Secretariat. Paul, over to you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And please remember, all conversations go back online. For those questions that we were not able to respond to, we apologize. Well, kindly know that the discussion will continue online, and I think we can continue this conversation. Thank you so much for this very insightful session. You have a lovely day. Paul, over to you.
No, thank you, Precious. We promised a hard stop at 6, so we'll just do that. Let's just go on to the WhatsApp group. Brian put up a link on this call. Those who are not on the WhatsApp group, please just put your details there and we'll add you. We're going to post all these questions there, and Venancio is already on the group and he'll try to answer the questions. So thank you very much. Wish you a good evening, morning, day, or the rest of the time. Please subscribe to the association, join. We have wonderful discussions on the WhatsApp platform. We organize occasional calls like this on a quarterly basis, so look out for them. Thank you very much. Stay blessed. And thank you to our wonderful moderator. You did a good job, and the panelists in a special way.